Alright, this is lesson 39, dividing rational expressions. This is a continuation from yesterday. So this lesson and yesterday's lesson is they're very similar because the concepts are the same. We just have a little bit of extra work to do. So when we first taught you how to, or when someone taught you how to multiply and divide fractions, when we divide fractions, you might have like a problem like, you might have a problem that looks like this from before, like 1/2 divided by 3/2, right? So the way we taught you how to do this is you have to multiply, you change the division sign to a multiply sign, and then you multiply by the reciprocal, which is just a flip fraction. So 3/2 becomes 2/3. Make sense? And then, of course, we just do what we did yesterday, cross out the 2's, those become 1 each because they go into each one time. So 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 3 is 3, so that's your answer, right? Remember this from before? Yeah? So how do we multiply fractions? Or how do you divide fractions? You multiply by the reciprocal, okay? So why don't you turn to your neighbor, remind him really quickly. Okay, good. So today is just going to be the same thing, same concept. Let's just say that 3/2, let's say instead of it being 3/2, I wrote an x down here and then there was an x here, right? So remember, we have to think about excluded values. So we never want our fraction ever to have a 0 in the denominator. So right here, do I want a 0 in this x? No. So this would be an excluded value. And then, so this is an excluded value right now, but watch what happens. If I flip that 3x over x and multiply by the reciprocal, we got x over 3x. Oop, going too fast here. X over 3x, right? So then 0 again can't be an excluded value, even though it's there. But what if it was different? We'd have to calculate excluded values for the whole thing. All right, so that's the concept for today. Steps, if you're on the video, you should pause the video here, write them down. And here we go. Okay, so number 1. We have 19 over 17 divided by 15 over 17m. First thing I always check for are excluded values. Are there any variables in this first denominator? No. Any variables here? Yes, 17m. So we take that whole denominator, we set it equal to 0, so 17m is equal to 0. Then we solve for m, divide both sides by 17, and m cannot equal to 0. Okay? Good? Now we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. We don't cancel things out yet. Okay? So we take 19 over 17, we keep it the same, change the division to multiply, and multiply by the reciprocal. So it's going to look like 19 over 17 times 17m over 15. Okay? Then again, I check my denominators before I move on. Are there any variables here? Nope. Any variables here? No. So now we're good. The only possible excluded value was 0. Now we start simplifying. Does 19 go into anything around here? Does 19 go into 17? No. 19 go into 15? No. Okay, but 17 and 17 go into each other one time, and then 15 can't simplify anymore. M can't simplify anymore. So we have 19 times 1 is 19, okay? And we have an M there. And then 1 times 15 is 15, okay? And I ask myself, can I simplify 19 and 15? Anything? Nope. Semicolon. Write your excluded value, m cannot equal to 0. That's number 1. Okay? Any questions on number... Sorry, I'm going quickly here. Number 1. Okay? Pencils down. You'll get a chance to write, I promise, okay? Number 2. This one's kind of long and intense, okay? So I wanted to show you the hardest one you could get through. So number 2, we got 3m plus 18 over this trinomial divided by a trinomial over a trinomial, okay? So the first thing I want to do is ask myself, are there any excluded values here, okay? So the first thing I want to check for is this first denominator, 12 minus 4m. There's definitely an excluded value there. So I'm going to rewrite that on the side as 12 minus 4m minus m squared is equal to 0. Now I'm noticing, usually I like it in descending order to factor, right? This looks a bit confusing. But I notice this is a positive 12 and then negative 4m and then negative m squared. I never like dealing with a negative m squared. So I want to make it so it's a positive m squared. So basically I want to move everything to the right side of the equation. So I'm going to add m squared, add 4m, and subtract 12. Okay, on both sides. So I'm going to get 0 is equal to m squared plus 4m minus 12. And all I'm really doing is just changing the signs. You see? Switching sides. Then I use Xbox to factor this out. You get m plus 6 times m minus 2 all equal to 0. It just looks backwards, but we're still using the symmetric property, so it's fine. We got m is equal to -6 and m is equal to 2. These are both excluded values, okay? That's just the first denominator. Now I have to look at this next denominator. M squared minus 3m plus 2. Does it have excluded values? It does, because there are variables there. So I'm going to rewrite that here on the side. And again, I would work it out, m squared minus 3m plus 2 using xbox. Factoring it out, we get m minus 2 and m minus 1 is equal to 0. Solve it, you get m is equal to 2 and m is equal to 1. These are both excluded values. So at this point, how many excluded values did I already calculate for? 3, right? Because one of them repeats. 2 is repeated, right? Which means that I have to actually write that. Okay? Good. So that's good. Now we're going to rewrite this. We're going to multiply this by the reciprocal. So I'm going to take this whole first numerator and rewrite it as the numerator again. But I'm going to factor it as I go, because I kind of like working things out as I go. So I can factor out a 3. 3 times m is 3m. 3 times positive 6 is 18. The denominator now. Remember how this is all backwards? We have the opposite signs. I like it in descending order with m squared being positive. Right now it's negative. So check out this trick right here. When you see this, all you got to do is factor out a -1. Okay? Then I ask myself, I'm going to start with the m squared. -1 times what is negative m squared? Positive m squared. -1 times what is negative 4m? Positive 4m. Okay? And -1 times -12 is positive 12. Okay? So all I just did is factored out a negative sign. Okay? Do you all see that? Then the second fraction, I have to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay? So I'm going to change this division sign to a multiply. And I'm just going to rewrite it. I'm going to put the numerator in the numerator, and numerator in the denominator, and the denominator in the numerator. Okay? So now I have...
Hey, you guys won!
So after here, we have to ask ourselves, are there any new denominators? Yeah, there's a new denominator right here. And we have to ask ourselves, are there excluded values in this new denominator? Yes or no? Yes, for sure. So we have to do this again. We have to do a side problem, figuring out any sort of excluded value. So you would put it to the side, and you would calculate excluded value. So we get another excluded value, or 2 more answers, but now we have -7 and 1. So we got a ton of excluded values. Some of them repeat themselves, though. Okay? Now we need to factor things out. So now we know all the excluded values. This denominator we could factor out. We kind of did it already over here. So we're going to rewrite this out. The denominator we can write out as -1 times m plus 6 times m minus 2. This one we already factored out earlier on the side right here. So we're going to just copy that over. And then the new denominator here we could factor really quickly. M plus 7 times m minus 1. Okay? Now this is the fun part, because you did all this work and now you can just start canceling things out. Okay, are there any m plus 6s around? Yep. It's gone. Okay? M minus 2s, they're gone. M minus 1s, they're gone, right? That's always fun when you got like a ton of stuff to cross out, right? It's like, wow, this is exciting, okay? So what happens when you divide anything by itself? It turns into what 1, right? So all of these, when I cross them out, I'm assuming there's 1s there, okay? So this numerator is 3 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is just 3. Okay, denominator we have a -1. I'm going to bring that down. And then we have -1 times m plus 7, okay? Now, sometimes students are going to want to multiply this out. I'm going to leave that -1 there, and I'm going to ask myself, let's just ignore the m plus 7. What's 3 divided by -1? -3 over 1, right? And then 1 times m plus 7 is m plus 7. Okay, that's your final answer there. Are we done yet? No. Nope, semicolon. You write all of your excluded values from least to greatest. That's it. Okay? Questions on numbers 1 or 2? Okay, now number 2 looks really intense. It's a lot of writing, but it took longer because I talked a lot. And I want you to know... And Chipotle, right. I want you to... Listen, hey, I'm trying to give you a tip. Hey. You can skip the step from 1 to 3 when you get good at this. Because you could have just factored from here to here. Right? Didn't you already factor this denominator right here?
Yeah.
And from here to here, you just flip it and factor as you go. Combo. No, Street Fighter. Math Fighter.
Oh my god.
Whoa. Okay, I'm just playing. Anyways, that's how we do that, okay? Do I want you to skip steps? Only if you're comfortable and you get it right. Do not skip steps if you're not very good at this, okay? But I'm just letting you know how to save a little time. Okay, that's how you do numbers 1 and 2. So what I'd like you to do, today's Tuesday, let's have twos talk first. Twos are talking first about number 1. And then 1 cell 2 is about number 2. Okay, ready, set, go. Okay, continuing on. Oop. Number 3. You have 12 over 8r divided by 17r cubed over 12r. Okay, we're just doing number 3 right now. Turn your neighbor and identify any excluded values on the first step. Y'all working this out? Okay. Are there any excluded values on number 3?
Yes.
What are they? 0, right? If we work these out, you get 8r equals to 0, which is r is equal to 0. And again, right? Now, do you have to do all this side problem work when you get good at this? No, you don't have to. You could just write a little note on the side, r is equal to 0, so you don't forget about it, okay? Okay, turn your neighbor, tell him what you would do next. Okay, what do? We flip it, right? So we got 12 over 8r times the reciprocal of 12r over 17r cubed, okay? Now we want to ask ourselves, are there any more excluded values? Yes or no? What's the next excluded value? So we're going to do 17r cubed over 0. Now check this out. R cubed is not a, don't think too much about R cubed, right? How do you get rid of an R cubed? What's the opposite of cubing something? No, not square root, but cube root, right? So take a cube root of both sides. Those cancel out. And what times itself 3 times is equal to 0? 0. So R is still 0, right? Okay, and then we start simplifying it. Here's your hints. 12 becomes 4 times 3. 8 becomes 4 times 2. Start working this out, please, and give me your final answer.
Ready?
Go. Okay. So we got 18 over 17r cubed. Semicolon r cannot equal to 0. Okay? Good. Next one. Number 6. Please write down number 6 for me. What are the 3 excluded values?
-4, 3, and -2.
Good. Do you guys agree? -4, 3, and -2? That's right. Okay. Right? Okay, next step, what would you do? We just found the excluded values. Next step, if it's a division problem, what are we supposed to do? Okay, good. We set it up and flip it as multiplication problem. And look what I'm doing. Look at what I did to that denominator. When I flipped it, what did I do? What did I do from here to here? I Xboxed, right? It's like I did a combo, right? I was like, I'm going to do a reciprocal, and I'm also going to factor it, okay? Okay, work out the rest of the problem for me. Tell me what the final answer is with the excluded values. This one. It's the correct answer. And I like writing it down as I like writing the excluded values from least to greatest. Okay? Is that good? Muy bueno. Okay, good. That's it. That's all I gotta say about that. So,